Ayubowan, Namaskaram. Welcome to episode 6 of the Wool and Forest podcast, Runaway Spring. Now let's take a little moment for some silence and for some light. If you are a returning viewer of this podcast, I would like to encourage you to light a little oil lamp or a little candle or whatever you have close by that will give you a little bit of light. Just as I light my little oil lamp here, if you either have a little clay lamp with some oil in it or even a small candle, something to set the tone, something to bring yourself here to this moment of silence and stillness and light. So please take a few minutes, pause the video, and take some time to bring some light. Make sure you're sitting in a comfortable position, whether it's cross-legged on your chair like I am, or with your feet firmly planted on the ground. Keep your palms facing upwards, place them gently on your knees, and very slowly close your eyes. Take a deep cleansing breath into your stomach and very slowly out through your nose. Allow your awareness to settle just at that point outside of your nostrils, just around your nostrils. Allow your focus, your attention to settle there. And watch as your breath starts to slow down and settle. Be aware of the breath coming in through your nostrils, cool and fresh. Then become aware of the breath coming out of your nostrils, warmer. Notice the subtle changes. There is no need to force your breath in and out in any special way. Just allow your breath to come in and out of your body as it always does. Now, when your breath is settled and your body feels settled and all the energies within you have settled like sand to the bottom of the ocean bed, take a deep breath into your stomach. Watch it expand on all sides like a balloon. Keep breathing until your chest rises up and out. Keep breathing until your shoulders fill with air and rise up slightly. When you can't breathe anymore, hold that breath for a second. Then allow it to very, very slowly come out through your nose. Now gently, very gently, and in your own time, open your eyes. Hello, welcome to episode 6, Runaway Spring. And I will tell you very soon why this episode is titled Runaway Spring. I hope you all enjoyed and gained some value from that moment of silence and light. And yes, I do encourage you to keep a little candle or keep a little oil lamp, something, whatever you have in your house, something that you use regularly to bring light. Light a little stick of incense and, set the ambience. Set the ambience right for having this experience, for being here with me. Often we rush through life in the modern world. We rush through our days and through our moments and through our interactions with people without bothering to set the ambience. And that is something that is so much an important part in the way people operated in traditional cultures, in the cultures that I came from. The setting of the stage, the setting of the ambience is so much more important than what comes after. In fact, it colors everything that comes after. It colors the nature of the very experience of your interaction that you have, either with people in a social context or with something you're doing with your hands, whether it's study or work or creativity or working out in nature or being in nature. Setting that ambience. Our entire culture is based around rituals and practices that are for this exact purpose. Their main purpose is to set the ambience so that the experience unfolds in the most profound and expanded way possible. So I encourage you to set the ambience for yourself in whatever way feels most natural and most natural to you. So lighting a lamp of some form is traditional where I come from, and I think it is a very grounding, settling, very intentional thing to do. So I recommend that, and some incense always helps. So how have you all been? I hope you've all had a wonderful week since the last episode was aired. Thank you to all of you who went through the trouble to watch and to leave comments. We have had an incredible return to winter. That's why we're calling it the Runaway Spring, because spring abandoned us. It started abandoning us 2 weeks ago, but last week it just went nosedived into winter weather. In fact, there were moments when we were sitting at the table looking out over the bay and over the forest, that we were saying, oh, it feels very much that we're not approaching the summer solstice, that we're approaching the winter solstice, or at least autumn equinox. That's how dark it's been, how cold it's been, but beautiful. Because out here, the weather is just weather. Whatever weather we have, it's always amazing. It's always spectacular. It's always uplifting, no such thing as bad weather. So that's been that way. I hope you have all had beautiful entries into the midsummer period. So let's get on, because I do have a lot to share today. A lot to share. In my hands. So what do I have in my hands today? Many of the things that I had in my hands last time, and a few more things have joined the fray. So the Batik Skirt that I shared with you in the previous episode, that I said is going to be part of a very, very special aspect, a very special part of Wool and the Forest, a very special part of my creative expression, the very special part of us and everything that we're going to be doing through this. That Batik Skirt has moved on to the next stage of its journey, and I've actually been working on it. It has gone through a mordant and it has gone through the Indigo vat, which happened yesterday. So I'm making it a part of in my hands and not out of my hands, because I still have one last thing to do on it before it is a fully fledged batik printed skirt. And I'm so excited to share this with you guys next week. I think next episode it'll be complete and I'll be able to share the full skirt, and most likely before that on Instagram I'll be able to share some photos of me modeling this beautiful thing. So hop on Instagram and find me at Wool in the Forest, so that you can have a little sneak peek ahead of the ahead of the next podcast episode airing. So the Batik Skirt in I've written Batik Skirt in Mordant. It's not in Mordant anymore. It's actually out. I've actually dipped it into my new Indigo vat. That is in my hands. I've also been doing some eco printing. Yes. If you watched the previous episode, I was wearing a pair of white overalls, and it's one of my favorite garments to wear. My mother bought it for me from Sri Lanka. It's pure Sri Lankan linen, which is, I'm not biased, okay? I'm not biased. I believe that Sri Lankan linen is the highest quality linen I have ever touched, sewn with, handled, felt, worn, anything. Indian linen is beautiful too, and hey, we are one peoples after all, so this is not something against Indians, and part of my such a large part of my upbringing was from there and my background is from there. So I'm just saying that Sri Lankan linen is it's exquisite, and these overalls were made purely out of Sri Lankan linen, and I wear it all the time, but I've been wanting to bring some new life to it. It had a lot of stains and spit up from babies, and you know how it is when you're pregnant and then you go into newborn baby land, your clothes start to your clothes start to look it. So it was like that, covered in stains of various kinds, turmeric colored baby poop stains, things like that, So I wanted to give it some new life, and I've been interested in trying out eco printing for some time, but this is not standard eco printing that I did. I've been sitting and puzzling out a way to use the eco printing foundations for something else entirely, something that fits in a bit more with my traditional textiles. So this is a sort of, can you call it fusion? Fusion textiles, fusion techniques. So that is something I have in my hands, because I haven't actually unbundled my eco printing bundle yet. So that is sitting in my sunroom at the moment, and you will see it, of course, probably right now, somewhere either to my left or to the right or top or bottom. It'll be there. You'll get to see what I mean, and hopefully next week also that will be complete, and I am so super excited to share it, most likely by wearing it for the next episode. Let's hope. So that is in my hand, the eco printed overalls, my favorite overalls. The next thing that I am working on right now is my new Indigo vat, of course. Of all the things that are in my hands, by far the most precious, and the thing that takes up all my days, morning, afternoon, and evening. It's like having another baby. It really is my lovely new Indigo vat. I have moved up to a much larger size, a much bigger investment in Indigo, and I'm not talking about investment in terms of financial investment in Indigo. The investment of effort and time and attention and care and emotional and energetic entanglement, that kind of investment is my new vat. So I have been spending a lot of time. The last week has been spent caring for the fermentation, the natural fermentation of the vat, learning so much from her. She's a her. My vat is a her. My vat is a her, but the energy, the indigo that comes out of it, the underlying substratum of this vat is definitely a him. And I think you'll know, those of you who are in the space with me, you will know which him I'm talking about. So, but in her material form, in her physical, energetic, raw form, she's definitely a her. So she has been telling me and teaching me so much. I'll have to listen to her very carefully, of course, to get the best out of her, but I've been learning so much from her, and I have been listening to and reading so much about indigo culture and vat dyeing from my part of the world, from South Asian, from the South Asian perspective, digging into historical records, digging into works and academic articles and books and watching videos, all written in my native languages and all spoken in and presented in my native languages. Been watching a lot of YouTube, spending a lot of YouTube watching Sinhala channels and Sinhala artists, textile artists, talking about their work with indigo, showing how they work with indigo, and seeing that even within a country like Sri Lanka, there's a massive, there's a significant effort to dig up and reclaim some of these older, our traditional indigenous ways of working with indigo. Because so much of indigo science, indigo culture that you see in the world, the indigo teachings that you see now are Western, actually. It's like a hodgepodge of traditional-esque techniques and knowledge that has been poached from our part of the world and then sort of mixed in with Western reliance on chemical techniques, on mine techniques, anything basically that increases output and speeds things up. That aspect of capitalism has been merged in with some of these traditional techniques. So a lot of what you see out there as organic techniques or traditional techniques are actually not very traditional at all when you look at some of the materials that are used. So there's a effort in my part of the world, in places like Sri Lanka, to try to reclaim the truly indigenous ways of working with natural dyes and specifically with indigo. In fact, recently, my dad has got in touch with one of his friends who is a professor. I think she's a doctor of textile sciences in a university in Sri Lanka. And I'm so excited to try to connect with this lady because part of what they're doing in this Department of Textiles in this specific university is the reclamation of indigenous dyeing techniques, textile dyeing techniques. So I'm just swimming in it. I feel so fulfilled when I circumvent what is presented by Westerners as, traditional textile techniques, and I make the effort to dive deeper to say what is actually traditional, what is actually truly indigenous to our part of the world, what is actually truly organic and working in sync with nature. When I don't just take what is given to me, don't just accept it, and I dive deeper, it's such a fulfilling experience, such an ancestral, real connection to my textile heritage. And you can tell I'm shining with it. This is the stuff that brings me alive, So, yes. Okay, before I get carried away and fly away with that, let's move on to what else is in my hand. So the indigo vat is fermenting and she's ripening beautifully. I have been doing more indigo dyeing as well. I have put some yarns through the vat, which again are in this segment and in my hands because they haven't been neutralized or anything yet. They're hanging in my slowly evolving dye kitchen, which is something else. Again, I'll speak to you about that later. They're hanging there and I've given them one dip. There's a few different yarns that I'm trialing out, sampling out. And I think they're going to require maybe another dip. I'm not sure. But since they're not neutralized and in my idea finished, I'm presenting them to you as in my hands. So more indigo dyeing is in my hands. The crochet mandala that I spoke to you about last week, the design by Isabeth Bueno, that is most definitely in my hands still because, it's a bit of a mess. Look at it. I've made zero progress. I have done absolutely nothing on it since the last time I podcasted. There's just not been any time at all. So I'm aching to work on it though, because crochet is one of those techniques that are so it's like spinning for me. It is so comforting, so comforting. There's something about the motion of crochet that's just so freeing and I love it. And I just haven't had enough time because wool in the forest, everything that we're building here, everything that we're attempting to bring is taking up a lot of our time. And little tiny baby who is still nursing heavily and taking her transition to solids very slowly. Two little wildlings who are unschooled, consciously unschooled by me, who I'm so engaged with during my day. All of that. It's life. Life is where it's at, right? So everything else sort of falls by the wayside, but not permanently, just waiting for their turn to be picked up. What else? To move on. Knitting on winter socks. Yes, I have actually done a little bit of knitting. Surprise, surprise. So this is a pair of socks that I started. Oh my goodness, it has become so dark. We have a thunderstorm that's coming. So that's something I probably should have mentioned when I started the podcast. That there is a thunderstorm expected in the next, probably few minutes now. And you'll probably hear a massive downpour coming. And if it is too loud, I'm going to have to stop the podcast and record at a later time, in which case you might see some discontinuity. But it is getting very, 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 very dark. So if you're wondering why the lighting has changed, that's why. Anyway, carrying on. This is a lovely pair of socks that are another one of my design as you go socks patterns that I started actually late in the winter, sort of, I think it was January or February when I started this. As a pair of socks for me, because believe it or not, after all the pairs of socks I've ever knitted for so many people, I have never, well, not so many people, few people, always for others, for my girls and for my husband, I have never knitted a pair of socks for myself. I don't own a pair of hand knit socks. So I started this with a yarn that a friend sent over for me. And, you know, I've been having a lot of fun with it when I was working on it. And I have one done. It's basically just a toe-up tube waiting for its afterthought heel. And it's got some fun things going on. It's actually not finished. And I'm going to be doing a bit of using a few other techniques to finish this socks, because you guys know, if you follow me on Instagram especially, that I love mixing up techniques and not just sticking to one thing, like just sticking to knitting to create a garment. So this I actually picked up and started working on my second sock tube right here. So that's happening at the moment. That is in my hands, and that's fairly mindless because it's a sock tube. So I've been able to pick it up and put it down here and there for a few minutes at a time. That's how I make now. Now, what else? Oh, yes. I do have another something in my hands. Two last things left, actually. I have this that I have started. Now, I don't know if you can see any of this because of just how dark it's become, but this is an embroidery that I've started. It's still at the stage of just having the drawing on it. It's part 3 basically of a series of embroideries that I started when I was pregnant with my little baby Usha. It's based on these beautiful dot work drawings done by my husband Arik, and we did we've completed 2 already, and this one is actually for a friend. And so this is being worked on a hand dyed piece of Indian cotton canvas fabric. This was dyed in my previous indigo vat, my last vat that I said bye-bye to. So this is going to be very special because it's the first embroidery I've done on hand dyed indigo fabric. So it's again, it's an iteration of things to come. So we'll keep an eye on that. It's basically, it's going to be a version of these. So these are, I call them dot work embroideries. I'm so inspired by his drawings, his dot work drawings. They're exquisite, the amount of detail and time and effort it goes to create these tiny little drawings entirely out of dot work. And so we started this collaboration project where I found in my own way a way to replicate that in stitches. So this is one, then there's another one at home, and then this will be number 3, and that'll be this one I have in my hands right now is the last small scale one I'll be doing. So we're going big with the next ones, and you'll see more of this, definitely more of this coming. So yes, in my hands. One last thing to show you is this darling creature. Can you see him? I call him my acorn friend. He's my little acorn friend. I started him in December. It was close to solstice when I started him. And he is part of my little army of felted woodland fey creatures, or should that be felted fey woodland creatures, whatever it is. They are little creatures who come alive in my own mind, in my own imagination, and that I bring to life out of needle felted wool. And this one is very special because he's wearing a little leather cape. And I'll speak more about him. I just wanted to show him to you because I've been aching to finish him. He's not quite finished. I know he looks like he might be, but he's got some work to do before he's finished into the final acorn being that he will become. But this is also another aspect of the kind of work you will be seeing through this podcast and from me, from Wool in the Forest, is this my special love that I wish I had far more time to indulge in, which is needle felting little creatures. Yeah, I love this work so much. Anyway, there he is. I'm not going to say much more about him other than he's my acorn creature, my acorn friend, guardian of the forest. And he is coming alive slowly, and hopefully I'll be able to share him in his final form, in his final ecosystem. Yes, soon. So I'm starting to have that feeling that this episode is going to be even longer than the last one. In the last episode, I spoke on and on about how I wanted to reduce the length of the episodes and how I was trying so hard to be efficient and quick and trying to find a middle ground, but it's not happening. It's just there's so much to share with you, and why would I not take my time and sit here and do that? So still, I am trying to be efficient, which is why the notes, which is why the planning, the organizing, all of that, so that I'm doing this with as much mindfulness for my time and your time as I can bring to it. However, so moving on, those are all the works in my hands that I can share with you right now. There are things, obviously, I wish I had in my hands. I am aching to knit some Alice Starmore patterns. Oh, here comes the thunderstorm. If it gets too loud, I will have to stop. I have a feeling it will be too loud. See you again soon. See you on the other side of the thunderstorm, I think. Oh, but that sound. It is such an embrace. Every part of you feels embraced by it. Like you can just give into it, fall into something that has no bottom at all. Right back, my little honey bun. honey bun. Honey bun, honey bun, honey bun, 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 honey bun, 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 bun. So here we are. I'm back again. The thunderstorm that was not actually a thunderstorm was just a very strong downpour that I could not have recorded past or through the downpour. So it came and it went. I managed to get back inside the house, feed my girls, nurse my baby, spend a little more time with them, and I'm back. So carrying on after that little interruption. What was I speaking about when the thunderstorm, that was not a thunderstorm, broke? Oh yes, Alice Starmore. I've been aching to knit some Alice Starmore patterns, and I actually have a book of her patterns, an old book, old publication, and there's one that I've been eyeing for some time, which is actually not in this particular one. The book is, I think, her book of Ganseys. And I think her patterns are just exquisite. I mean, she is a knitwear designer. Like, I know I've spoken about this before. Almost everyone can call themselves a knitwear designer now. But to me, there's a handful of people I think of as truly designer worthy in terms of being designers and having a totally unique and distinctive language when it comes to motifs and everything, and she's one of those, I think, from the older generation, of course, but one of those real foundations for me of modern knitting, Alice Starmore and her colorwork patterns from her Fair Isle patterns. So I have been eyeing one up, and I cannot wait someday, somewhere over the rainbow, to have the chance to cast on one of her patterns. So that's future knitting, I hope. And also to finish my Adivasi socks pattern, which is still sitting, hibernating. I need to finish that pattern, and hopefully in the next couple of months I will finish it and have it tested, because I already have testers who have volunteered to do the Adivasi pattern, and it's being forecast, it's being held for launch release somewhere in autumn anyway, so it's not too much of a rush, but time is flowing faster and faster every year, I feel like. So yes, time to get on with things. So changes in the Verge today. Today, just like last week, we brought you a very important being of the Pacific Northwest, of the Olympic Peninsula, the mighty Madrone. I hope you enjoyed that in the last episode. Today, we bring another very important great being of these lands. And we will be doing this in parts, actually. Today is part 1 of introducing you to the Evergreens of the Olympic Peninsula. The Evergreens here are the predominant the predominant visual presence of the Olympic Peninsula. So, and they are a very important part of the ecosystem here, of the feel of the place, of the energy of the place. So today we will start with the Douglas Fir. But before we get on with that, just a little bit of chatter about how it's been, which I already started on at the beginning of the podcast. I know I spoke about the bye-bye spring or the runaway spring and this little bit of midsummer winter that we're having at the moment. So it's so much rain, just like before, but the up and down of rain and sun and 4 or 5 days of cool rainy weather followed by a day of just beautiful blue skies and lots of sun means that the plant babies, I have many plant babies that I've planted out into our little plots this year. They are growing like mad. It's wonderful plant growing weather. So the plants are growing, and the girls have been eating all the berries off the trees and the bushes. Oh my goodness, there's not a single wild strawberry left because they have absolutely massacred the wild strawberries. Eaten every last one of them over a period of about 4 or 5 days, and they have just been. It's such a joy to see them. Look out from the cottage from time to time and see, like, out there in the forest, one little head will poke up out of a bush and another one will go down and creep up somewhere else. They're out there hunting berries because the salmon berries are bursting out in the bushes all around the cottage and the woodline and into the forest. So these two are out there just eating their way through the forest of berries. And there's been just enough sun to do some dye work on the deck, in the grass, under the cedars. So a lot of that, I hope we will be able to bring some of that to you in Changes in the Verge. Changes in the Verge. Well, we have been so busy working with the land and with the soil these past few weeks. I've done a lot of sowing of new seeds, a lot of transplanting of old plants, spreading out beauty across the land around the cottage. It's been hands in earth, hands in dye pots, just full of Mother Nature, really. And everyone has been joining in. Today we're going on a little journey around our property to meet another important being of the Olympic Peninsula, someone who really sets the tone for so much of our landscape, and that is the Douglas Fir, Pseudotsuga menziesi. He is the great grandpa tree of this landscape, and especially of the immediate surroundings around the cottage. Towering over the maples, towering over the bushes, over the ferns, showering the whole land with his green-blue light, green-blue shadows. The Pseudotsuga. A home to so many animals, not just the Douglas squirrel. A nesting space for so many native birds. This year we've had the western tanager, native to the Olympic Peninsula, has built a nest in the largest of the Douglas firs that lives right next to the cottage. We call it the Grandpa Fir. It's a shelter for all kinds of creatures over the winter. One of the most beautiful stories, Native American stories of this part of the world, is of a little mouse who is escaping a forest fire and finally finds shelter and safety inside the very center, the very kernel of a Douglas fir cone. It's a beautiful little story. The Douglas fir, which is not a fir, it's actually a pseudo fir and a pseudo hemlock. A sort of an in-between creature, really, which is why I'm quite drawn to it. Another liminal being in a place where the in-between is so very strong, so easily accessible. I often think that the Douglas firs really lend the light to this landscape. The blues and greens of the Olympic Peninsula, I'm not sure they would be possible if these giants did not spread its canopy over everything as they do. And of course, growing as fast as they do, some of these furs from time to time need a little bit of tender loving care, and Arik, my husband, has been bringing a couple of them down which have not been faring too well. And part of forest stewardship is being able to help the ecosystem as a whole by making space in a very conscious and careful way, making space by bringing things that are not working down so that other trees and other species can thrive. This is life in the forest. Nothing wasted, nothing lost. Everything gained. So I hope you enjoyed that little foray into the land immediately surrounding our cottage. Actually, that was all of that, all of those shots, all of the filming there that was done on our property here in the forest. So I hope you enjoyed that as much as we really, really enjoy bringing it to you. We love sharing this beautiful place with you, really do. And for now, at least, this is one of the one of the best, most effective ways to do that is through video, through these video offerings. So carrying on into the next segment of the podcast, Out of My Hands. What's the work out of my hands? I'm looking at my notes here, and a lot of these things are things I was meant to share with you last week, but I just ran out of time. But some of them are sitting here on my dress form, so let me get these down for you. So, out of my hands. Last week, I wanted to show you this indigo dyed canvas. Quite a few natural dyed things out of my hands. This is the same piece of, or part of the same piece of Indian cotton canvas fabric that I dyed and am using for this embroidery. So this is the rest of that piece. So this is something that came out of my last vat. It's a wonderful color. It's almost like it's a muted bluish gray. I would almost say almost like a faded denim, faded jean look. And this was dyed in a very weak indigo vat. So this was towards the end of the lifetime of my smaller vat, of my first organically fermented vat. And this cotton canvas was dyed at the very tail end of its life, fairly low alkalinity. I was playing with how treating the vat in different ways yields completely different results, and makes an entirely a different range of colors available to you that are now moving away from blues into more grays and greens and things like that. So I've been playing with that a lot, and this was a result of that. And I think many pieces of this fabric will find its way into projects in the future. Embroideries, other secret things I can't mention right now, things like that. So that's out of my hands. This is a fabric that I performed some natural dye magic on a couple of weeks ago. This was dyed using avocado pits, avocado skins, and a few onion skins. Very few, but mostly it's avocado pits and skins together. And I had a lot of fun. This is actually a muslin. I think it's an Indian cotton muslin fabric. It dyed beautifully, gorgeous color, and this is going to become the base actually for some batik work, I think. Well, some batik work, some other work, secret work, things like that. So that is out of my hands, quite a large piece of fabric that I dyed. And this is something that came out of my Indigo vat, and I think this was one of the last things I put into the old vat. And this is a jumper that I knitted about 2 years ago. Was it 2 years ago? It probably was. Anyway, it was when I was pregnant with Usha, but I didn't know that I was pregnant with her yet. So it was that summer. So not the last summer, but the previous summer of 2019. And this was another one of my design on the fly, on the needles projects. I designed a little crop top. So it's a crop top in chunky weight yarn. It's got a lacework collar. It's fully reversible. I will try to show this to you more closely with some different shots. And I had so much fun working this pattern. It was done seamlessly, but as a cardigan, and then crocheted up the middle with some hand spun yarn to create an actual pullover or sweater or jumper, whatever you want to call that. So it was such fun to make, and I was enjoying the process so much that I didn't stop and take notes at all. So there is no pattern for this currently. Now, if I ever knit it again, yes, but I tried so many amazing things with this jumper that I almost feel like I want to bring those back into some kind of pattern. I did these deep, I played with doing very deep short row neck bands, and shaping the neck that way because it was knitted from the top down. And I did this work with the sleeve, which actually involved a bit of piecing and knitting in pieces and knitting things together as you go, things like that. So I think the sleeve is probably my favorite part about this sweater. And, it got a ton of wear when I was pregnant with Usha. I got a ton of wear. And it was looking a little, just, like knits that get a lot of love and wear. It was looking a little bit raggedy, mostly because of the color. The color was a sort of an off-white, a natural sheep's white color. And I thought it would be the perfect candidate to jump into the Indigo vat and get a second life. So that is something I didn't share last week and that I'm sharing now. Hopefully by now, on the other side of the screen, you would have seen some better shots of that. It's a lovely jumper. I wear it often. Now, another thing that's come out, out of my hands is my little Lyra, who is my second daughter, her cardigan. Now, I think I showed this in episode 4, that I was still finishing it, and now it's finished. This is a bit of my upcycling, adventurous felting, using knit to felt as a sort of way to create shells for embroidery, for things like that. So this is one of those projects that I did, and it's a technique that I have absolutely fallen in love with, and I know that I'll be using more of in the future. So it's based on the shelf was an old cardigan that I had knitted for myself that I was not wearing very much at all. So I felted it, turned it into this lovely little jacket, really. It's so firm and lovely and stiff now. Jacket for my second daughter. And I did this lovely embroidery on it, which was a lot of fun to do, but took a very long time. Because it took quite a bit of consciousness to keep all the motifs, pretty much the same size and to space them out evenly. And then the neckline got this wonderful hand-stitched treatment, which has become, I think, one of my favorite hand stitches now for edgings and necklines. It's called it's a variation on blanket stitch, and I believe it's called crossed blanket stitch, and it creates an edging that doesn't look anything like blanket stitch actually, but it's so beautiful and works so well to edge a garment. And I think I'm going to be using this stitch more often, really, instead of using traditional blanket stitch. It has a much nicer, more flowing kind of look to it. So finished that. And one last thing to show you from the dye vat. is this beautiful thing. I'm gonna have to stand up for this part because it is a sari. This gorgeous Bengali tunt sari came out of my old Indigo vat. And this is a Bengali tunt hand-woven sari that I have worn quite a few times before. The base color of the sari was almost sort of a whitish gray. And so basically I overdyed on top of that. And it took the indigo so beautifully. Oh, it got two dips because the first time around it was almost a little too blue for my liking. I was going for this very deep, mysterious, almost blue-gray, which is really my love. My color love is that. And oh, it is so beautiful. I cannot wait for the weather to settle down. I cannot wait for the weather to settle down long enough for me to go into sari weather, because it hasn't really gone at all into sari weather this year. So I'm waiting for that to happen so I can wear this, because oh my goodness. Again, it's impossible to show you how a Bengali tunt takes indigo. It comes alive in it because the weave is so thin and so open that on each part of the fabric, the dye doesn't quite appear the same, especially because I did it in quite a small vat for dyeing 6 meters of fabric. It was very small. And because of that, the variations, the natural variations that came of that, oh, I love it. I absolutely love it. It's, yeah, I can't wait to wear it. And I'm hoping this week on Instagram that I can put this on, have some photos and have them to share. So yes, wonderful thing that has come out of my hands. And now let's take a little moment for Magpies and be right back. Moment for Magpies. Well, today I don't have my magpie basket, but I've arranged all my magpie findings on a little disc of alder that came from our property. Arik has been clearing trees, and an alder that was too close to the well house needed to come down. So that's what I've laid out my findings on. Not many things today. Let's have a look. I have this beautiful piece of seaweed. And I love doing this. I love to collect seaweed from the beaches. And I often find them just like this at the beach, sort of curled and tendrilled in the most beautiful way around pieces of gorgeous driftwood. And often I would like to bring pieces of seaweed home, wet them, and curl them up around the pieces of driftwood. And I get these lovely little curls. That give me a little bit of joy just to see. That's seaweed, and I also found these beautiful rocks, which I am really hoping that you're able to see the colors on them. They have the most magnificent greens in them, which I believe is the presence of quite a bit of iron. Beautifully smooth, cold rocks, and this one is particularly gorgeous. Has a mauve, very dark burgundy purplish tints with veins of iron going through it. This one here is a sweet little stone I found there, which has this perfect little white line going around it. I really hope you can see this because I don't have a zoom lens. You can see that. And here I have a lovely little piece of madrone bark. I spoke about the mighty madrones the previous episode of the podcast, which featured the mighty madrones and changes in the Verge. And this is a piece of bark that I picked up off the path at the beach, where many, many madrones grow at the beach on the coastline. And a lovely seashell, tumbling away from me. Lovely little seashell. And this perfectly shaped little piece of seaweed with little bubbles in them. which was nice and wet and bubbly when I brought it home, but now I've dried it. And another little seaweed and driftwood package. Moment for magpies. Hello, so welcome back. I hope you liked that tiny little bit of break for Moment for Magpies. And let's get on with what's down the forest path, what's down in the next few weeks, what's to come from us. There has been a little bit of a delay on the Brown Hands Blue video offering that I spoke to you about in the previous episode, and mostly it's been a weather delay. The weather has just been too wet, too misty to go out and shoot a lot of that. So that's been put on hold for now, but we're hoping starting tomorrow, the weather's supposed to lift beautifully. So summer is actually arriving as summer as it can get on the slopes of the Olympic Mountains. Tiny little summer, but we are going to have a summer starting next week. So hoping to get some shooting done on that. And more to come. Next episode, I'm going to be talking a little bit more about my mother's textile work. It's starting to come more and more in a very strong way into my work. And I'm starting to see those connections, those karmic echoes and resonances, that really show you when you start walking down the path that you're meant to, the path that has purpose for you, the path that is aligned with your dharma. When that starts happening, you start to feel this little vibration where every single thing that comes into your life, occurrences, meetings, people, start to be in such alignment and in such balance and such, people call it serendipity, but for me, I understand it entirely as karma manifesting itself in a specific way. When you bring down the resistance and you bring down your attachments to the outcomes of your actions, and you bring down your entanglement with your own karma, things start to happen and flow. It's another beautiful word in English to describe it, is you start to be in flow. Things start to work for you. And my mother's work starting to come into my work in this way is very much an example of that. She recently sent me one of her project books, which, she used to have many, many, many project books of her textile research that she did to create these motifs that are now such a normal part of the woven fabric textile visual language of Sri Lanka. She was the first actually to do it. She used to have lots of notebooks, but recently I think she lost quite a few in because of moving countries and things like that. And recently she sent me her most important one, and I cannot explain to you the impact of seeing this book and her notes and her drawings and her motifs for the first time. It was just incredible. So I'll be talking a little bit more about my mother's work and sort of placing her in context. But one thing I can say is one of her most important clients for the boutique that produced all her work was the first female prime minister of the world. Now, some of you might not know this, but the first female prime minister of the world was actually a Sri Lankan woman, and she was one of my mother's most prominent and important clients or patrons for her work, and gave her work a lot of exposure at the time. So yeah, my mother's she's been there and done that. So to find that all starting to click into place and find a home in what I do it's a wonderful thing. And I'll bring you more of that next time. Soothecast is something, again, I spoke about last week. And again, you're going to just have to wait because we're still formulating how to bring Soothecast for you. But it is coming. It is a beautiful little shadow that's flitting around down the forest path. It's there. It's coming. So those are all things that will be coming. And I think I have officially run out of time to talk about anything other than maybe what I'm wearing right now. So today I am wearing the Mallika cardigan, which I shared a couple of weeks ago, a few weeks ago on Instagram. And I also shared this in one of the previous episodes of the podcast. This is the Mallika cardigan. And you know, it's a wonderful, wonderful thing to have a shrug to put on to. Now, yellow is not my color at all. I think it's this common misconception that if you're dark skinned, you're naturally going to always like all bright, bright colors. I'm not really much for things like yellow. I tend to veer towards the darker end of the color spectrum and towards the blues and the sapphires and the purples and things like that. So yellow's not my color. But the shape of this garment, the way it turned out, the textures in it are so wonderful. It really is an all-season garment. I mean, I'm finding that I keep putting it on 2-3 times in a week. I love it. But I will be sending this away as a gift to one of my dear, dear, darling lady friends, my lady loves. And she will be receiving this. And she, like me, tends to get cold at any time of year at all. So I'm hoping this will bring her a lot of comfort and keep her warm on cold Pacific Northwest days. So yes, I think that's all I have time for. I am going to run away back to my babies and have a beautiful day for a couple of more hours before more rain comes and more thunderstorm is forecast for the rest of the day. So I am wishing you all a wonderful, beautiful slide up to the summer solstice, which is days away. And the next week, actually, we're going to be very, very busy because we have a wedding anniversary, a birthday, and summer solstice to celebrate at home. So it's a big week for us. So I will not be podcasting next week, but I will be seeing you on the other side of the summer solstice week. So I'm wishing you a beautiful time, lots of wonderful time with your friends, your family, your loved ones, lots of moments for stillness, for silence, to allow that wonderful grounding into yourself and into this life to happen, and for stillness to expand into your days. Wishing you all of that and a beautiful week ahead. Are you born?